So, Dave, we have a big musician on the line here we want to talk to. And tell everybody who it's going to be.
Garnet Grimm. Savoy Brown.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
4 words. All right. Drummer for one of the greatest blues rock bands in history.
All right. Good enough. Let's play our intro.
The following is a Tony Lasano podcast, an Opie show on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. This is the Minutia Man Celebrity Interview with Rick and Dave.
All right.
That's a rockin' song for a rock guy that we're going to talk about.
Yeah. You know, Dave, I'm happiest when I'm talking about music, and this week's guest is Garnet Grimm, the drummer, one of the greatest blues rock bands in history, Savoy Brown. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Nice to talk with y'all.
The band has a new album out called Blues All Around, and we'll get to that in a bit here. But before we do, I know this is kind of a bittersweet time for the band, because even though you have a new album out, you recently lost your founder, guitarist, principal songwriter, the leader of the band since 1965, Kim Simmonds. Tell us about Kim and what you consider his greatest contributions.
Well, I mean, I really think Kim gets a little underrated he kind of flies under the radar, so to speak, with history, and it's kind of a shame. I think he should be talked about and remembered a little bit more. Kim started Savoy Brown probably when he was 15 or 16, and he kept it going for almost 6 decades, and that in and of itself is incredible, but the body of work that he put out was incredible. I mean, he was contemporaries with Jimi Hendrix and John Mayall, Cream, a lot of the guys that were involved in that period. And he was a great guitar player and a fantastic songwriter. And he really he was a pioneer. He really had he really was part of that, not only the British kind of blues rock movement that came here, the British invasion, so to speak, in the 60s, but he was really a pioneer in that British rock sound, that what we sort of would call that British, the rock, blues rock sound. And he was really instrumental in the formation of that. They were originally called Savoy Blues Band, I think, the Savoy Brown Blues Band, and I believe the first record may have even had that on it. But quickly, as things were progressing in the 1960s in London, and he was really on the cutting floor of all of that, and he's really a giant, creative giant. I miss him dearly.
So he started the band when he was 15. I don't think I was able to spread like cream cheese on a bagel when I was 15. It's amazing that it started so.
I spent all of my 15 year at the orthodontist's office,
right. Collecting baseball cards.
Well, he said he literally started it in his bedroom. It was just him and a few neighborhood guys. He didn't have a garage, so there was no garage band. It was a bedroom.
A bedroom band, yeah.
And it grew from there. And there's been a lot of people in and out of the band over the years. People who went on to really some pretty good fame. Serious fame. So, the one that comes to prominent. It comes to mind would be the band Foghat, which they were all, except for Rod Price, they were all members of Savoy Brown.
Yeah.
But there were others. I mean, Dave Walker spent time with Fleetwood Mac and Black Sabbath, and Kim really had a far reach. It was incredible. I think. I've heard, I think Judas Priest at one time took Kim out for a tour back in the 90s maybe. And so they really enjoyed Kim's playing, I mean, everybody from Judas Priest to the Kentucky Headhunters have covered some of Savoy Brown's songs, and it's really, really incredible. But like I say, a lot of people wouldn't know that, he kind of flies under the radar, and some of that was Kim's personality. I mean, he never, one of his sayings that he would say often is, I do not like to chase the carrot. So, he was kind of a humble spirit, and
more of a musician than a type A look at me personality is what you're saying.
Right, exactly. So but it was incredible. He's an incredible guy. So
tell us a little bit about the new album. It's called The Blues All Around. It's out, correct? It's available everywhere, I would assume.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell us about the album, the process, and what can somebody expect?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the process because it was quite a bit different for us. A blues rock band, we generally recorded live in the studio, and since I was involved with the band, going back about 14 years, and I had known Kim prior to that, maybe since 1999, I guess. And so anytime I recorded with Kim, it was always live, but that's the way he liked to do it. And but this time around, he was diagnosed with cancer 2022, early on, 2021 still maybe, and he just didn't have the energy. He had the demos complete, he had the music ready to go, but he didn't feel he had the energy to spend hours and hours in the studio. So what he did was he sent us demos. He sent the band demos, and the engineer we were going to use also got the demos, and we all talked about it for a bit of time, how we were going to approach it. And what ended up happening was Kim went into the studio by himself and laid down his basic tracks, and Pat DeSalvo, the bass player, and I went in later and laid down our tracks over Kim's, what he had recorded. So it was done quite a bit differently, and it was a little nerve-wracking for me personally, because I was thinking, I hope this works. We've never done it this way. So but I think in the end we ended up with a really pretty solid product. So we were all pretty happy with the way it came out. Kim got to hear everything. I mean, he was made all the decisions. Really, the record was done. He just did not live to see the release date, which was unfortunate. So yeah,
he just passed away in December, right?
Yeah, he passed away in December, and one of the last conversations I had with Kim was we were talking, and I remember I said, well, when do you think the release date will be? And he said, February. It's right around the corner. So, but gee, in that month time frame, he had passed. So that was kind of sad. But it's been doing very well. We've had, I get updates almost daily as far as Amazon sales and how it's doing on some of the streaming services, and it's holding its own. It's doing very well. At one point we had reached number 4 on Billboard for the blues rock blues category. So I don't think we could have, I'm not sure we could have done any better without supporting the album, because we were behind, I think we were behind Bonnie Raitt, who just won the Grammy, and Buddy Guy and Edgar Winter. So then it was us.
Pretty good Mount Rushmore there.
Yeah, right. So and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm thinking about these blues greats like Buddy Guy, who are here in Chicago. We're in Chicago right now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And Chicago is like one of the capitals of blues in the world. But Dave and I, we're 60 years old.
59.
59.
59.
Yeah. And we grew up learning to love blues music, not through these great artists that were right here under our nose, like Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker and stuff, but we learned it through like
Zeppelin
Savoy
and
Brown and the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and early Fleetwood Mac and stuff. Why do you think that is, that Americans, it took the British to show us how great blues was?
Yeah, isn't that incredible? I exactly had sort of the same experience. I mean, we had to listen backwards almost.
Yeah, exactly.
I have my own kind of theory. I mean, for one thing, they were starting to embrace, they being the British, and the Europeans were starting to embrace that American, more of American art after, post World War II. And a lot of the blues artists, some of them you were mentioning, Muddy Waters, Johnny Lee Hooker. There was a ton of them that went over to B.B. King, a ton of them that went over to the UK and toured in the 50s and 60s. So, they were starting to embrace that music. And I really think sometimes, it's kind of a human way, isn't it? Where you don't really appreciate what you have until it's not there. So
I tell that to my kids all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we had this music that was an American art form, really, but it was, we were still sort of segregated. I mean, it was
a black-white issue, isn't it? In some ways,
It was a black community was embracing it at that time, and of course, there were some young kids that knew about it. I think rock and roll came out of the blues.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
So there were some blues roots in rock and roll, and the kids here in America, of course, were embracing it, but not in the way that that I think the British sort of grabbed onto it. So that's my theory. And of course, there was no YouTube or any of that stuff back then. Radio stations were kind of segregated still, and so even venues, you had black clubs, and
and within the country, the old Chitlin circus that they had, a circuit that they had south of the Mason-Dixon line as opposed to the north, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So those were all instrumental, in how that came about.
So you've been in the band for 15 years, right? It's coming right at 15.
Right.
And you're filling the role that was once filled by Yes and King Crimson drummer Bill Bruford.
Bruford, yeah.
But which, by the way, King Crimson, me and Rick, we sat behind Adrian Belew while we were watching Amadeus, the movie Amadeus in Champaign in 1986,
top that story,
maybe 87, and Adrian Belew was right in front of us.
No kidding.
I think it was Juju Beans and Snowcaps. I think he was
Diet Coke.
So tell us how you got into the band, and how. It's a wonderful story.
It was a great experience for me, and Kim had married a girl, a wonderful lady, Debbie, his wife Debbie. She is from this area. I live in central New York. I'm north of New York City. I'm in the Syracuse area.
Okay. And
Kim had married a lady from this area, so he was living here for some time. And keeping the band together and touring and etc. And I was approached by a mutual friend Kim had, myself. This friend had asked if I was interested in doing some recording with Kim Simmonds, and I went, Kim from Savoy Brown? Yeah, of course. So this would have been in the late 90s, and it was really funny because this one particular day, it was in the summer, beautiful summer day, and Kim has a studio behind his house, and so they told me to meet at this certain time. I said, okay. So I get there, and lo and behold, Pat DeSalvo's playing bass that day, which I had known Pat also from the local music community up here in this part of the woods. And so turns out Pat had known Kim since the late 80s. They were acquainted. I did not know that, and this was the first day I had met Kim, of course. So he had already had, of course, a very accomplished career. He was one of my heroes, really. I was very nervous that day, and but Kim made me feel comfortable, and we all hit it off really well. That was in 1999, and we did the project was just a solo record. It ended up being called Blues Like Midnight. It was an acoustic solo record that he did. And I added percussion, some drum parts, and Pat played upright bass on it. So we became friends that day. It was a great friendship that started and lasted all the way till he unfortunately passed in December. But what happened, how I got into Savoy Brown was Pat was asked by Kim to cover some dates because the bass player in Savoy Brown at the time was having some health issues. So Pat called me and said, hey, can you help me get ready for these shows? Can we do a couple rehearsals? And I said, yeah, sure. So I learned about 90 minutes of Savoy Brown material just to help Pat get ready for the shows. And it was soon after that, and we were all friends, so it was soon after that Kim had called me and asked me if I would join the band, and I said, wow, that's incredible, yes.
Let me think about it.
Luckily, I know your entire catalog.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know the entire catalog.
That's a lot.
He got 42 albums.
Yeah.
But I knew the current set he was playing at that time, so that was enough to get me going. And it was great because, the nervous part was kind of over. I mean, I still felt nervous those first gigs with Savoy Brown. I felt, wow, this is something that's, a piece of history. It's bigger than I am. And so there was a little nerve-wracking that way. But as far as rehearsing and getting together with Pat and Kim, it was not too bad at that point because we had developed a friendship for years earlier. So it was nice. It was a nice way to enter the band because it wasn't stressful. Like, okay, your audition's at 2:00 Saturday, and
right.
You better be prepared. So it was a nice way for me to enter the
it's kind
situation.
Of eased your way in a little bit.
Yeah. It was really cool. So I still remember the first tour we did actually, and the first tour we did took us to Chicago and Milwaukee, and it was cool.
What was the first show? Do you remember the first show of that tour? Do you remember that first?
I think the first show we did was in Milwaukee, and I'm trying to think of the name of the club right now, and it escapes me.
Cheeseheads?
No.
I made that up.
Yeah,
I don't
Cheeseheads.
think
No,
was
but,
it called Shank Hall? We've done a couple.
It was Shank Hall.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
it was.
All right.
Yeah, It was Shank Hall, and we did. I'm trying to think of the place we played in Chicago. We played there several times too, but anyway. And it was a wonderful tour, and I do remember we got back just in time, and we had a snowstorm that week here, so we got back into town just in time. I said, "Wow, that was great!" So that was the highlights of that trip.
So
we played in Detroit. I remember Detroit. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So 15 years tours, you must have some good rock and roll road stories. Brushes with great. Like, what's the best hotel buffet out there? Whenever we have touring musicians. We just had on Kurt Elling a couple of
Yeah. Are
weeks
you
ago.
in a bus? Do you travel around in a bus? You have like a van, or are you flying from gig to gig?
Well, the answer is yes and both.
Yeah.
What Kim would do is he had a huge van. We didn't have a tour bus, but we had a huge van, and he had a big silver 15-passenger van that we used to travel in, and I used to say, okay, if we had to drive from here, we always drove from New York, and I would say the square states. That's how I would say.
Yeah.
So, but from the middle of the country, if we had to go, usually what Kim would do is we would do the East Coast. He would do that in a certain grouping, and then he would do the Midwest, and we usually always drove to the Midwest, and then we would come back, and then usually twice a year we would do the West Coast. So we would, at one point, we would say in the fall you would do California, and that the southern part, Arizona maybe the southern part, and then I remember in the summer, in the spring months, in the summer we would go to the Northwest. So that's when we would do Washington State, Oregon, Vancouver. We often went up to Vancouver and that area. So, he had it down. I mean, after nearly 60 years of touring, you kind of get, you get your.
So you've got to see the world through being in this band.
I really did. Kim also was very big on the band unit concept, which is starting to be lost. You know what I mean? Where a lot of artists, and he could have done this easily, a lot of artists are asked to, okay, we'll go do a European tour. They have a band in Europe. They go to somewhere else, Japan. Well, we'll provide a band for you, So it's quite lucrative for a lot of artists, but Kim did not like that. He really liked the band concept where you play and grow, travel and live together. So that's how we did it. And
it
I was
probably
very fortunate.
helps you on stage. You form a cohesion where you start to read each other's minds, and you can look at him and go, oh, I know what he's thinking now because I've seen that look before. That sort of thing.
That absolutely is true. That is, you're dead on with that. That is something that, you really, being in Savoy Brown, you did a lot of jamming. There were lots of jam sections. He would do solos, and I always said, sometimes you'd get in the middle of those jam sessions and you were thinking, I don't really know what's going to happen next.
What song are we playing?
But he was always very good about bringing the ship in for a landing. I mean, I can't remember any moments where there was a crash and burn moment. He was always very good about that, and I think that comes from guys playing together for so long. You start to feel what each other's doing, and you can almost anticipate what's happening next. And I did get to. I'm forever grateful to Kim for, and he literally did take Pat and I around the world. I mean, I don't know how many countries we did, but we did a whole bunch. Brazil, Japan, all over Europe, and into Wales, the UK, and so it was really wonderful time. I'm forever grateful for that time that I had with him. And I have to say, I called him. It was nice because I was able to call him a friend. It was nice.
You spend that much time with somebody.
Yeah. So while we got you on, because we've had a few drummers on in the past, and having drummers on is one of our favorite things. We just like talking music. Who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of drummers? Like when you growing up, you obviously love music. You've become a musician. You've dedicated your life to it. You are a great drummer. Who do you look up to?
Oh man. Well, I like you guys, I'm pushing 60 as well. So
you're 59. Are you 50?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What month were you born? Because let's see who's older in this group here.
November.
Oh, you're the youngster.
Oh, gosh. I remember when I was your age 2 months ago.
Well, we were fortunate, weren't we? We had such a great period where, the 80s, okay, we could, but even in the 80s, I wasn't much of a hair band guy.
Yeah, me neither.
But you had some great, you just had great bands and great players to follow and look up to. And, I had such a great bunch of guys that I could look up to. First of all, so I would go back even to the 40s where I would dig up guys that I would listen to. And a lot of drummers would say, oh, yeah, Buddy Rich. And I was like, yeah, I like Buddy Rich. Of course, he's phenomenal. But there was some other great ones. One of my favorites was this guy named Louis Bellson. And Louis Bellson was one of the pioneers of the double bass drum. He used to travel with double basses, and there wasn't. I don't know. I don't know how he got the idea. There may have been someone else, but he certainly made it.
He
popular.
popularized it. Yes.
Yeah, and but he was one of my favorites, of course. And it's funny. I still look up YouTubes with him, and he's fantastic. And but of course, for me personally, I really was a blues guy. I enjoyed roots music, and how could you not like John Bonham? I mean, I wanted to be John Bonham. And
it's turned out better for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you took the better route, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, what a fantastic player, and he was somebody that just you could just tell that he felt every note he played. It wasn't. I mean, when you heard his bass drum, it was like a cannon going off, and he was just a great player. And, so those guys, of course, a lot of those guys from that period I really enjoyed and listened to. We had, of course, I mean, I have to say, as a young kid, I was enamored with Ringo. And a lot of people will brush Ringo aside, but I have to say I think that he was very innovative for his day, and he did some pretty cool things. So I personally like him, but
I saw Dave Grohl interviewed once, and he said, he idolizes Ringo. There's something that Ringo was left-handed, right? So he would lead with his left hand, which makes it all a little bit different. Like they would just slightly off. Here I am. I'm talking drums with this guy now.
So this is how you do it.
I'm telling the drummer of Savoy Brown how to drum. I think you know how to do it.
Also Charlie Watts, I think, is
someone
who was kind of. Not necessarily when you think of the Stones. Not a lot of people probably don't. But I thought he was just great.
He had like a jazz sensibility.
Yeah, I just loved his. I thought he was the perfect drummer for the Stones.
And a lot of those guys, I think, grew up in jazz, learning that. So it's not. I don't think it's an accident that some of those guys played like that. For example, if you listen to some of the recordings that Mitch Mitchell did with Jimi Hendrix, you could really tell how he was, from that, he learned those jazz grooves and was kind of, he had that, I could hear it in his playing, Yeah, it's great. So
Well,
I love all that stuff.
This has been very nice of you to take your time to come and chat with us. I could do this all day long, but once again, the name of the album is
Blues All Around.
Yes,
and it's put out by Quarto Valley Records. And if I might be able to ask any of your listeners, please take some time and go to savoybrown.com. You'll see a little bit of history and discography on the band, and you'll get to see some of Kim's artwork. He also was a painter, so some of his artwork's there.
And social media accounts for you? Are you on social media? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, you can do the Facebook. We're all reachable on Facebook. Savoy Brown as well has a Facebook page. A good friend of Kim's continues to do the Facebook and tries to keep it up to date, of course. Debbie, Kim's wife, tries to keep the website up to date with merchandise, etc. So we're all there, man, and I really encourage it. And you can get get the record there. Yeah, you can get the new record there as well. But please check it out, man. Check out Savoy Brown and Savoy Brown.
I like Savoy Brown. It sounds a little more elegant.
It's a little more British.
It does.
Yes.
It does.
Well, when you're in Chicago, let us know.
Yeah,
we'd love to
come out and watch you. Thanks very
Absolutely.
much.
All right.
Garnet Grimm,
All right.
This has been a pleasure. Very much.
Thanks
for being on the show.
Thanks, Dave and Rick. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a nice guy.
Why did they say Dave and Rick when you have talked to them first, as opposed to? Do you ever know? Don't we make it clear that it's Rick and Dave?
You make it clear.
I think it's like on all our labeling, Rick and Dave. It doesn't say Dave and Rick.
I'm trying to get them to say Dave and Dick, which is coming.
That works.
Coming.
All right, well, we've got people to thank. We need to thank our executive producer, Tony Lasana, with opishows.com. Opie is hippo backwards, OPPIH shows.com. We're distributed by Ed Silla.
The Podfather.
He's the Podfather, yes. Great Talk Radio isn't dead. It just moved to a better place, radiomisfits.com. And we'll be back again next week with a brand new episode of
Minutia Man Celebrity Interview.
The preceding was a presentation of Opie Productions. Find our other great shows wherever you find podcasts, including opishows.com. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Opie Productions.
Tony, can you shut up?